And we are live on LinkedIn, Facebook, YouTube, TikTok. Let's cover something that I think is really important if you are somebody that wants to lose weight and get in shape and you want to maintain some sort of social life, or you have kids, or you have a demanding job. So that probably accounts for every single person that follows me. So basically, if you want to lose weight and you don't want to live like a bodybuilder, for lack of a better term, that is what we're going to cover today. So the topic today is, put it up there, flexible versus rigid dieting for weight loss. What I'm going to do first, I'm going to talk about the two different approaches. I will probably talk about some pros and cons of each one so that you can go away and say to yourself, right, this is probably what I've got wrong with trying to lose weight from a nutritional point of view. This isn't going to be about training. So from a food point of view, by the end of the live, you can decide what is a better approach for you. Spoiler, if you are a 40 plus man, you probably don't want to do the rigid dieting, but we'll see. So let's go into rigid dieting is where you have the diet plan laid out in a very formatted way. I used to give clients rigid set diet plans many years ago, and they would look something like meal one, 2 scrambled eggs, some oats, and blueberries. Lunchtime, 200 grams of chicken, some broccoli, 50 grams of cooked rice. Dinner, sirloin steak, 8 ounces, X amount of sweet potato, and then there'll be some snacks. That's what we refer to as rigid dieting. I think it's also referred to as rigid dieting in the scientific literature. Because, of course, they have kind of studied this, what is better for weight loss for the majority of people. So that's rigid dieting. Flexible dieting is where you don't really have these set parameters. So you don't have it as, I'm going to eat my meals at these times. You don't have it as, I have to eat X number of meals. You don't have it that you have to have certain foods at certain times. So you wouldn't do, so something like intermittent fasting would, I guess, would be quite rigid. Can have a flexibility to it, so that, you know, it's not always black and white. But there is your two types of diet for weight loss and for muscle building, really. Rigid, almost like a food plan, which you might get from a personal trainer sometimes. Like I said, I have done it in the past. And then a flexible approach where you would manipulate and change the diet based on what you had going on in your day, for example, how much time you had, where are you eating, and what foods do you fancy, because that's important. So pros and cons of each. Let's start with rigid dieting. The pros, the benefits of rigid dieting, of having a meal plan set out for you. So if I send you a meal plan and it just says meal 1, meal 2, meal 3, meal 4, meal 5, breakfast, lunch, dinner, plus 2 snacks, whatever it is, if it lays it out, puts a rough time, and it's like, this is how much chicken I want you to have, this is how much rice, this is when I want you to have a protein shake, this is when I want you to have blueberries. That level of structure is very simple to follow. You have it in front of you and you're like, this is what I'm going to follow. The benefit to that is, it's, you know, as long as you're being held accountable and you're motivated, you can't fuck it up. You can, but it's very difficult. If someone gives you that meal plan, like menu, and says, just follow this, if you mess it up, it's really down to discipline and motivation and really possibly not caring about your goals. That is a great benefit of rigid dieting, just having it all laid out for you. That being said, you could do that with flexible dieting, but I'll go into that in a minute. The downside to rigid dieting, which is why I'm not a big fan of it anymore for my clients. I sometimes do it for myself, but what I do for myself is not really the same as what I do for clients, and I'll explain why in a minute. But the downside to rigid dieting is often people get bored quite quickly. So if I give you a meal plan and the meals are the same, you might get bored. In the past, sometimes I would give people meal plans that had a few options. They still got bored. Boredom when you're trying to lose weight with your nutrition is not ideal. The second, possibly more important negative to rigid dieting is that it doesn't fit your lifestyle very well. So let's say meal 1 is I don't know, a protein shake and some oats, meal one. And you do that every day until one day you get invited out for a breakfast, or you have to go to a work meeting, or you're too busy to do it. And all of a sudden it's chaos. It's like, shit, I can't eat this meal at this time. I don't have these foods available. And what you find with most people, because if they've chosen to do a rigid diet, they probably want simplicity and they don't have the knowledge and the skills to change it, is they panic. Shit, I can't eat that food. Oh no, I'm going to mess up my diet. I feel guilty. I feel frustrated. And that is, for me, that is a huge reason why I think rigid dieting is not ideal for most 40 plus men. The benefits of flexible dieting, well, they reflect what I just said. You change your diet based on what's going on. So you might have one day where you do a low carb day. You just don't fancy loads of carbs. You want to have more protein and fat, more steak, more meat. Great. And then another day your carbs go up because you've been invited out for an Italian. You fancy having some pasta and you have a little bit of meatballs and you want more carbohydrates. One day you're really busy and you only want to have 3 meals. Another day you're a little less busy and you fancy picking on 6 smaller meals. There's a benefit of flexible dieting. The downside to flexible dieting, and I say that loosely, I don't think it's a huge downside, but it can take a little bit of time to learn. So what I sometimes do with clients is I sometimes give them a meal plan. And then as they gradually start to get bored, I might say, well, look, how would you change this meal? If you try using MyFitnessPal, let me know how you see if you can do it and I'll help you. And then after a while, they start saying, okay, I understand how to change this meal. I understand this. And they gradually transition. So flexible diet you need a small understanding of kind of how to move calories. You need to understand, you need to have the time or the kind of the want to be able to use something like MyFitnessPal. Which, if you can't be bothered to do that, like you genuinely can't be bothered to go into MyFitnessPal and create a meal, or you can't be bothered to go into the menu of a pub or a restaurant and kind of select and have it already, then that's where a rigid diet is better. But a rigid diet is going to be very difficult to maintain a social life. So there are pros and cons to both. Most 40 plus men, I've been working with 40 plus men for a long time now. I've been coaching for this is my 19th year of fitness, personal training, and coaching. In the last 10 years, I've done more macro-based coaching where you give people macros and calories and you teach them how to build their own meals. That for me works far better. I would say even in the last year to 2 years, I can only think off the top of my head of about 3 or 4 clients that were like, no, I just want you to write me a meal plan. I don't really care about food. I'm not a foodie. I eat the same every day. I can do it. In fact, if I bring up, you won't be able to see it on TikTok, but if I bring this up on LinkedIn and Facebook, my client, John, as you can see, you can't see him on TikTok, apologies, but he's basically on the left, he's a squishy dad bod, a 52-year-old. And on the right, he is a few years older and he's gained 14 pounds of muscle and he's got a 6-pack. He is a good example of someone who just eats the same meals every day. Partly because he's on the spectrum with autism. So he likes routine. So for him, having a set, I'll take that down now. For him, having a set rigid diet worked. But I think it's few and far between. That being said, he also knows how to change his plan if he goes out with friends or family or has business trips, which he does. One of my current clients is somebody who, when he came to me, was like, I travel about 2 weeks of every month. Last month, he spent 42 hours in airports and he was away from home for about 2.5 weeks. He kept struggling when he was out traveling around Europe for his job because he would be eating on the go. He'd be eating in hotels. He would be eating with clients. He's a prime example of someone who really can't have a set meal plan. You can't go to a hotel restaurant and go, okay, well, I need 200 grams of blueberries. I need this chicken grilled. You just look at the menu and you just go, okay, what can I have? Okay, it's salmon. One of my guys many years ago, business owner. We started my program, and he started on Christmas Eve. This is for another day, this story, but this is how motivated he was. He started on Christmas Eve. That tells you how motivated he was. We did about a week of the program. Then he was like, Phil, I need to leave. He was Australian, but he lived in the Philippines, still does. He's like, I'm leaving the Philippines next week, and I'm not coming home for 7 weeks. For 7 weeks, he traveled around Europe, and he was growing his business, and now he sold it. But he was like, I'm going away for 7 weeks. I'm not coming home. I'm going to multiple countries, multiple cities, multiple flights. He's another guy that couldn't have a set meal plan. There's no way I could say to him, okay, you need to eat 6 meals a day and you need to do low carb and you can't eat after 3. You can't have any alcohol. It doesn't fucking work. He actually was very committed. He actually would take weighing scales to restaurants, food scales, and weigh his food. I don't advise it necessarily, but if you want to get results, that will get you results. The point being, he had a very unpredictable lifestyle. That is an extreme example, but I would imagine typical. Somebody's at the front door. 2 seconds. Right. Well, that's the carpet delivered for the new lounge. Anyway, where was I? Example, that guy was just talking about who went traveling for 7 weeks. Extreme example, but I would guarantee most of the people watching on LinkedIn, especially because I know pretty much I only connect with men that are pretty much over 40 and kind of are busy with careers. TikTok is probably a little bit similar. And you guys probably want to find the balance of, I look and feel good, but I can still have a social life. I still can deal with business meetings or work meetings. I can still, like, one of the things that's been different to me the last couple of years is I now have stepchildren because I moved in with my now wife, and they often say, try this food or have some of this food. And I can't say no. It would be so harsh to be like, no. These are things that you have to deal with when you are a dad, when you're over 40 and you're busy. So with that being said, a better strategy for dieting will probably be the flexible approach. Now, you might say, what does that mean, Phil? When it comes to a flexible dieting approach, this is how I do it. I was going to do a separate live for this, but I'll do it quickly now. You only really worry about calorie intake because that is important. It doesn't matter what diet you're following. That is the most important thing. If you're not in a calorie deficit, you can't lose weight. So you have to have, you have to account for calories. You have to account for protein for a few reasons. It will keep you full. It will help with maintenance of muscle, and it will kind of slightly increase metabolism because of the thermic effect of food. Those are pretty much the only 2 metrics you really worry about. Yes, you need a certain amount of fat for health, and yes, you will need a certain amount of carbohydrates based on your training. Are you training like powerlifters, or are you a marathon runner? Do you do triathlons? Of course, so it's going to fluctuate. After that, nothing else really matters. If everyone watching this live controlled their calories for the next month, ensured they ate adequate protein, could be from meat or dairy or, even vegetarian, vegan sources, and you got, like, every time you sat down, you looked at the plate and you were like, there's some protein, there is some good carbohydrates, and there is some fruit and veg, and you did that, it wouldn't matter if you had 2 meals a day or 10. It wouldn't matter if you went high carb or low carb. It wouldn't matter if you didn't eat until 12 o'clock and then stopped at 6. It wouldn't matter if you ate before bed. I quite like eating before bed, as long as it's not too big and too close. This will get you results. And what that means is you can look at your week and go, well, Monday to Friday, you might have a really set routine. You work in an office, that's pretty cool. Some of my guys, what I do with them, they've got the set kind of calories for Monday to Friday, and then we have more calories on the weekend so they can have a little bit more foods they enjoy. It might be a couple of beers, it might be a small pizza, whatever it is. That is one way of being flexible. Another way of being flexible is kind of having more calories on training days and fewer on non-training days. Some of you might want to do high carb on training days and low carb on non-training days. Some of you might want to do intermittent fasting on non-training days, like I sometimes do today. I didn't train today. It was just a cardio day, and I didn't have my first meal till about it was about half an hour ago, about 12. My point being is that a lot of the rules that you follow, and I tend to refer to these as, if you followed me for a while, you'll know I tend to refer to these as diet rules. A lot of the diet rules that people give themselves for weight loss are not needed. So for most of you watching this, it will be far better to say to yourself, right, for the next month, I'm going to make sure I eat the right number of calories, and that can be spread over a week. So like I said, you could have fewer calories in the week to save some for the weekend. I'm going to prioritize my protein intake because I guarantee if you're struggling to lose weight and you're a man over 40, you probably don't get enough. I'm going to eat from what I would do is Google a good list of foods. Google good choices for protein or recommended fats or recommended carbohydrates. Have a list and go, right, 90% of the time I'm going to have rice and I'm going to have rice and fruit and vegetables. I'm going to have lean chicken. I'm going to have lean beef. I'm going to have steaks. I'm going to have whey. I'm going to have olive oil, avocados. I'm going to eat most of the time. I'm going to Okay, there we are. But I'm going to save some calories for sweets, carbohydrates I like, maybe pancakes, maybe the odd curry, or even I got one guy that when he came to me was like, I'm happy to reduce my beer intake, but it's something I like to do is have a couple of beers at the weekend to watch the American football. He's an American guy. Is this possible? And it's fine. He's lost something like 2 stone, and he still has these, a couple of beers at the weekend. The key is the discipline. Like, you can't say to yourself you're going to have 2 beers and have 10. Just bear that in mind. So hopefully that gives some of you maybe a little bit more hope, because most of the men that I talk to are very disheartened with weight loss because they see weight loss as being restrictive. Can't eat these foods, must eat at these times, can't have a social life. It can't merge. You can't really put it together. And that means it's very hard to kind of, for lack of a better term, it's very hard to create a lifestyle when you can't integrate your healthy eating. And the same goes to training, but when you can't integrate your healthy eating into your lifestyle, your schedule, your goals, your preferences, it's difficult to sustain. So for most of you, if you've been trying to lose weight, I would imagine that a lot of you have been able to lose some weight, 5, 10, 15 pounds, half a stone maybe, but that isn't ever got you to where you want to be. And the worst thing is you then probably fell off the wagon because you were following these rigid diet plans, and then you gained the weight back because, of course, if you don't find the happy medium, if you don't find a sustainable approach where you control calories and eat well, then the only option is likely you're going to go back to what you were doing before. And what you were doing before was probably lots of takeaways, picking on foods that you shouldn't do, and just kind of comfort eating. So there's kind of hopefully that's helpful. That is the difference between rigid and flexible dieting. Both work, both have benefits, both have negatives, but I would imagine that for the most part, having coached people for a very long time, 20 years, the flexible approach would be better for you. Right, I'm done. I need to eat. Speaking of all this food, if you are on Facebook or LinkedIn, you are interested in coaching, or you just want to find out if I can help you, because obviously I don't know if I can, send me a message. If you're on TikTok, you can just use the link in my bio, or follow me and send me a message. Right, I'm off. Hope that helps.